Hey everybody, Tony D. Little Joan is behind me enjoying a bone. And we're getting meta again where I address the comments in a Screenwriter's Rant, American Skin, which got a bunch of reaction. I'm getting ratioed, so fine. I'll try to address some of the comments. First off, a lot of the comments were not about the movie. They were about real life events, about police brutality and how black people are being treated or had been treated. That's not what the video is about. The video is about the movie, okay? I get it. The movie's about certain themes, but a lot of people got way off the reservation with this. So, whatever. A lot of people said, slavery. To which I responded, everybody's ancestor has been a slave. And people went, how could that be? When was your ancestors a slave? Well, there's this thing called the Roman Empire. Lasted thousands of years. Before that, there was this thing called the Egyptian pharaohs. That also lasted thousands of years. And in between those two and after, all the way up until the United States ended slavery, there was slavery. All in the ancient world, all through the Middle Ages, there was slavery. I didn't invent it. Pretty much everybody has an ancestor who was a slave. There was slavery before there was history and civilization. There was slavery during Neolithic times. There was slavery in the Aztec world and all the the many South American civilizations. There was slavery with Native Americans. There was slavery everywhere. There's slavery today in modern Libya. But I won't go into that because even though people seem very upset by slavery, they don't seem to be upset about the current slavery in Libya. Maybe I ought to look into that. Anyhow, this movie is called American Skin. It's a Spike Lee joint. He didn't direct it. He was like an executive producer, or he presented it. And what I do in a screenwriter's rant, for those of you who couldn't understand it, I analyze movie trailers because I'm a screenwriter. So I analyze the movie. This is about the movie. It's not about the social, economic, and big, heady subjects that this movie explores. I have other videos for that if you want to see those political videos. But this is about a movie. And I keep saying that because people in the comments are conflating the movie with real life and deciding to make a stand in my comment section for some reason. I don't care about your opinions about politics. This isn't a discussion about the politics. That's in the other videos. If you want to discuss politics in the other videos, knock yourself out. But this is about a movie that Spike Lee was I guess he's probably the executive producer on it. And you might say, well, you hate the movie, blah, blah, blah. I didn't say I hated the movie. I was analyzing the movie. And when you do film criticism, there are parts you like and parts you don't like. Now, I'm analyzing specifically the trailer. And what I said, and I still have the same opinion, because this is just opinion, is that this cut of the trailer doesn't really show you anything new with this particular genre. And what this genre is, it's part revenge, but it's also sort of social justice in action kind of thing. And yes, there have been movies like this in the past. In the 60s and 70s and 80s, you couldn't throw a stick without seeing a movie about a hostage situation that would also turn into where one of the characters would do a diatribe about the establishment or the man or how people were being torn down by society and on and on and on. Because like back then, as now, there was political upheaval. And the hippies talked about the same exact kind of themes in this movie. If you watch any of the blaxploitation movies, you'll see these themes all in there. Now, you can argue that in those movies, they weren't very good. I would disagree with that. It was just a different presentation. Now, Spike Lee, and I said this in the previous video, I like Spike Lee. The reason I like Spike Lee is I like his movies. Some of his movies. I haven't seen them all, but I did like Do the Right Thing. I liked it so much that when I wrote a screenplay about social justice and racial inequality, and I've written one, I sent it to Spike Lee. And he was kind enough to write me a letter. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the letter. I don't know where. It was so long ago. This was like Do the Right Thing, whenever that came out. Probably like early 90s, right? Maybe 89, 90, somewhere around there. And he wrote a very kind letter thanking me for sending the script and, encouraging me. So I like Spike Lee. He's a cool guy. He was nice enough to write that letter. So I have nothing against the guy. However, he, like every other filmmaker, deals with film criticism. And people talk about movies. Some scenes they like, and some scenes they don't like. That's all part of film criticism. That's exactly what Spike and every other filmmaker wants. They want you talking about their movie. It doesn't matter that you say bad things about it. That's inevitable, because no movie is perfect. Now, what I said about this movie was it could be a little preachy. It could be. Kind of depends upon the ending, but I can't tell you the ending from this cut of the trailer. I can only tell you the ending I would want to see that would be morally consistent with a protagonist that we like. I don't know if the filmmaker here is going to do that. I question whether he would do that in this sort of modern world that we're in. In the 70s, that happened too. You had these morally ambiguous endings where people just, you weren't sure how to feel about it at the end. That might be what he's going for. Personally, I don't like those endings. I like endings where the good guys win. Or at the very least, when a good guy or a protagonist does something wrong, he acknowledges it and makes up for it. He becomes better. Even if he loses the war, he wins. See what I'm saying? So it's possible to have a protagonist who dies at the end and loses everything, including his life, but he gains a moral clarity that you can point to and say, yeah, even though he had his failings, in the end, he was a good person. Those are the kind of movies I like personally. Now, you could also go the other way. You could allow, like in Breaking Bad. In Breaking Bad, it's about Walter White going down the rabbit hole and never coming back. Because it just gets darker and darker until Walter is unrecognizable to the man he was when the series started. That is not the ending I typically like to see in a movie like this. Because I want the main character who something terrible happened to him, I want him to win. Even if he can't win against City Hall or the establishment or whatever, I want him to win on moral grounds. I want him to win. If he goes down a dark path and he just, in this movie, kills the cop and then gets killed himself, that to me is pointless. That's not a win for anybody. He gets his revenge and then he gets killed. The end. That's not a satisfying ending. Now, you may not agree with that. It's partly because some of you, in fact, probably most of you, are not screenwriters. You don't understand how this stuff works, how you get people to be emotionally invested in a character. Now, some of you are already emotionally invested in this character, and good for you. That's why you're going to go see the movie. You're already emotionally invested. Spike and the guy who directed, I believe his name's Nate, they hit your points. And you're like, yeah, I want to see this movie. Yeah, I want to see this guy get justice. I don't think it's justice. But that's just my opinion. We can have different opinions. You can yell at me all you want. I'm not changing my opinion because some randos on the internet in my comment section yell at me. We can discuss it, and we can have polite discussion back and forth, and that's how people learn things. In fact, I went into the comments and discussed my solution to the problems, and one of the commenters said, all right, yeah, I could agree with that. So it's a libertarian solution to the problem. Here, I'll give it to you now. So maybe you can absorb it and not have to feel that you need to yell at me. So a libertarian solution to this problem would be to legalize victimless crimes like drugs and prostitution, because they shouldn't be illegal. That would reduce greatly the violence and problems on the streets. It would reduce the pressure put on cops. They wouldn't feel like they got to pull over everybody who drives down the street. They wouldn't be under the enormous pressure they're under today. And you would have to remove the laws that they've put in place over the years that have weakened the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment, back in the 70s, as recently as that, was pretty strong. And cops would have to lie, at the very least, to search your car and search you. They still can't really search your car legally, but they've weakened the Fourth Amendment to the point where, well, if they think they've seen something, even if they're wrong, they can go into your car, and if they find something, it's all good. Back in the day, that wasn't the case. Back in the day, if a cop went into somebody's car illegally and they found evidence, to a crime, that evidence was thrown out because it was an illegal search. Now they've weakened the law, and they said, well, if you found stuff from a crime, you don't have to ignore it, which only encourages the cops to break the Fourth Amendment further. Under a system in which the Fourth Amendment was sacred, under a system in which cops were encouraged to be more beholden to the Constitution of the United States, they wouldn't pull you over without lots of cause. They would only pull you over under the most unusual of circumstances, and they would be amazingly polite about it. So that's the solution to these problems. These cops should have never pulled over these guys in the first place. They probably didn't have probable cause. Or they had probable cause that was so weak, they did it because cops do that. But if you had a strong Fourth Amendment, if the reasons were weak, the cops would go, well, that's a weak reason. We need a stronger reason for that to pull over these two guys. So none of this has anything to do with what's happening in reality. And what's happening in reality is incredibly complex, nuanced, and I couldn't address in a 10-hour video. And I'm not going to attempt to do that here because it's not about that. It's about the movie and what it portrays. And what you have to understand too is there are ways to manipulate your feelings in these kinds of movies too. They exploit your passion for justice to get your money so you see the movie. And you might think it's a great idea, and on paper, it sounds good that, well, this cop kills a guy and then later in the movie he gets killed. That sounds good. It sounds good when you describe it. But in actual practice as a movie, what would happen would be the movie would build and build and build until the moment you killed the cop, and then the air would go right out of the room. You wouldn't care. You wouldn't care at all what happened after that. It would be over. The movie would be over. And from a screenwriting perspective, not a reality perspective, but a movie building filmmaker perspective, you don't want that to happen. What you want to have is a climax, and you're going to have a little bit of a drop, but you'll have sort of a conclusion that says something. So when I say the guy shouldn't kill the cop, that's why. It's not about what's happening in reality. It's not about what I personally feel about, well, if my relative was in that situation and he killed my son. No, if he killed my son, I'd probably go bananas and try to kill him. But I don't have a son. So, I mean, if one of your relatives got killed by somebody, of course you'd be like, I'm going to kill this guy. That's a natural reaction. Now, actually going through it, that's a different story. And just like in real life, but actually more so in movies, all actions in movies have consequences. And you have to show them. Or they just kind of clatter to the ground and people go, well, that's not very realistic. Or that doesn't ring true. So when a character like this drags his friends along to raid a police station and put a cop on trial, and it naturally ends in a hostage situation, what you're doing is you're kind of opening up all these cans of worms and just letting them go blah all over the place. And that's why you'll end up with a movie that kind of has all these strings that never come together. If it's that kind of movie. I don't know. I didn't see the movie. I only saw the trailer. I'm just extrapolating from what I saw. Maybe the scene with the trial with the cop is unimportant. Maybe the whole movie is built around it. I don't know. I didn't see the movie. I only saw the trailer. And the movie makers make the trailer, and they're trying to get me to see the movie. So the trailers are often very misleading. They pull at your heartstrings or get you all amped up only to discover, oh, like I like action movies. Sometimes you see a trailer and you see all this action like, wow, this looks like a blast. And you get in there and you realize all the action was in the trailer. And there's only about 2 minutes of action and the rest of the movie's boring. This could be that same kind of thing. It could be that this is an amazing treatise on police brutality and race relations in America. Or it could be about other topics, and just the scenes in the trailer are the only trailer scenes about that. Somebody kept comparing it to Rambo for some reason. I don't know why you would compare this to Rambo. This clearly doesn't look like Rambo. Rambo was a completely different kind of movie. Was it a revenge movie? No, not really. It was... He wasn't getting revenge against anybody. They were just sort of pushing him around, and then he ends up killing guys and goes berserk. I mean, essentially it was... I don't even know what you'd call it. It's just an action movie. Just a weird action movie. I guess you could say he was getting revenge for Vietnam. I mean, because that was kind of the thrust. But it's a bit of a stretch to call Rambo a revenge movie. And it certainly wasn't about justice. I mean, you feel bad for Rambo, kind of, but he does kill a lot of people, and it doesn't make him very sympathetic unless you make the people he kills either incredibly cartoonishly evil or so just, robotic that you never really get to know them. That's another technique they use in movies. So when you kill off guys, if you know them, you feel bad. So the way they can kill off a lot of henchmen in a movie and you don't feel bad, and that maybe it's a fun movie like Deadpool or Venom or something like that, they don't let you meet those henchmen. They're just, mindless drones like in a video game who get killed. But this isn't that kind of movie. I don't think. From what I see, this is a movie where we're going to get to know every single character. They're not drones. They are people we know, even that cop. We get to know them. And when we get to know them, that changes the movie. That changes your perception. Now when you kill somebody, it's like, oh, you killed a guy. When Rambo shoots one of the guards in Vietnam in like Rambo 2, you don't know who that guy is. He was just a guy standing there with a machine gun and he goes dead. You don't feel bad for that guy because you don't know who the hell he was. You just assume he was bad because Rambo was killing him. In this movie, it's different. This is about pulling on those strings and getting you to feel and talk about this stuff. And I'm sure, my sense of it is, it's probably going to have a controversial ending. It's not going to be an uplifting ending. It's going to be more controversial. That's my gut feeling about it. But I don't know the ending. See? And Hollywood loves those kinds of movies because people will talk about them. And especially now, you talk about them on the internet. This is the second video I'm making on this movie. So people are already talking about it and it hasn't even opened. So you're doing a good job, Spike Lee fans, of promoting this film. But it doesn't change opinions about real stuff. This is a movie. This is film criticism. So compose yourselves, please. And let's talk about the movie. Okay? Let's talk about film. If you want to talk about the politics, click on some of the other videos I do. Thank you.